All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited about today's segment that I'm going to jump right in. I'm speaking with what I call a true warrior soul. She's someone who is brave and willing to speak truth, regardless of what the masses are doing. To me, that has my respect all day long. She was a meteorologist for CBS, and during her live broadcast, announced that she was going on Project Veritas to blow the whistle on discrimination that CBS was enforcing on their employees. I can't wait for this conversation. So welcome to the brave and beautiful April Moss. Hello, my dear.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today, Jen. Really appreciate you.
So first, I want to jump right into your experience with Project Veritas. That's where you jumped up on my radar. I saw you, and I had been looking at the news, and for me, I've been looking at the news with disappointment for many years, like 20 years-ish, okay? I teach
Absolutely.
people about their mindset, and to me, I was really, when all of this stuff happened with 2020, I was like, where are the leaders? There have to be some leaders, you know? And so to see you, and as I was sitting there watching that segment with James O'Keefe, my heart was literally jumping for joy to see you. And I was like, yes, there are warriors in the news, and there are warriors in these different areas. The pharmaceutical world, you know, that was another one. So I would love to hear what led up to that decision for you, and how do you feel now looking back on it that it's done?
So really, to be honest with you, this was something that, just like you, I was frustrated with my company for many years. I mean, just frustrated with the way that they reported on stories. But as a meteorologist, I didn't really get into the nitty-gritty day-to-day type stuff, because here I am doing the weather, right? So I'm keeping up with the fact that the news is always negative, that it has a far left slant. But at the same time, I was like, well, but I'm happy to do what I do. And so, but it wasn't until 2020 hit that I literally put my foot down, and I was like, I can't have my name. I'm not even proud to say that I'm from this company. I'm not proud of the work that we do. And at the end of the day, you have to love what you do, and you have to be proud of, you're leaving your family to go to a job. You should be glad and happy that the hours that you're spending away from the people you love most is going to create a positive impact in the world. And I just couldn't say that anymore. And that I was so saddened and really burdened, to be honest with you, with the fact that I knew all of this information from doing my own personal research during 2020, that I thought, I don't understand why we're continuing to push fear mongering, and we're purposely not reporting on any therapeutics or any other options for people to stay healthy. And yet it's just fear, stay in your house, and I didn't agree with it. So Project Veritas, thank God for them. I contacted them and said, listen, I have documentation that my company is literally just using the power of their brands to push this vaccine on people. We're not reporting on the safety or efficacy or any long-term studies, which anyone who was following that the whole thing as the Operation Warp Speed developed, you knew that, of course, there were no long-term studies. This was a very fast, program that they were bringing to people. But at least if you're going to offer this to people as an option, then you need to give a balanced report on, well, here's what we know about this so far. Here are the side effects that we know about. They didn't want to talk about any of these things. And so I got to the point where I said, I can't, because I was a host of a community show that would air on the weekends, in addition to doing my meteorology job. And so what I did wasn't really investigative reporting, but on my own personal time. We all have computers, right? Information is out there if you want to find it. And so I thought, well, I don't understand why we're not giving people. It's very easy for me to find, all of these answers. Why are we not providing this to the public? And I had a very firm answer from my producers of just that, no, we're just not going to do it. We have to stick to this narrative, basically. So it was really disappointing to me. And Project Veritas, was happy to give me the voice and amplify my voice, to be able to reach the masses. Because I considered a lot of things prior to coming to Project Veritas. I thought, okay, maybe I can just try to do this as civilly as possible. I'll talk with HR. I'll send in documentation from a lawyer stating that the COVID mandates they wanted to enforce on all of the employees was unconstitutional, that it was a violation of federal law under the EUA. I mean, I had actual documents drawn up, sent into HR, and it went all the way up to legal in New York. And they just basically said, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to abide by this if you want to keep your job. And so I realized very quickly, they're not changing. They don't care about breaking the law. They don't care about people's personal rights or freedoms. So I need to now go public. And hopefully by me going public, I can be a voice for everybody else who doesn't have a public platform and say, stop complying. Let's think about this. This is wrong, the agenda that they're trying to push. And so that was my motivation, was just hopefully I could help other people. And I knew that I couldn't be the only one that was frustrated with these forced mandates regarding COVID.
Yeah. Wow. I think that one of the things that you did, and that other warriors that are coming out and speaking truth, it gives people, it's like that domino effect, that ripple effect, where it gives people courage when they see you, that they go, oh, okay, just like Ivory Hecker, right?
Yes.
Two of you have both, I saw that you guys that you ladies did an interview together. And
Yes.
that you give each other, I thought, oh, I bet the two of them can just really relate to how each other feels,
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
another thing that was interesting to me is I'll tell you, April, I really didn't even know, does live even exist anymore? And so the fact that you went live, I didn't even know that they did live, because honestly,
Yeah.
I have felt like things were so calculated, and I didn't even know that they still allowed live segments.
They don't anymore.
Oh, they don't?
I found out after I did what I did, I found out just through another coworker that I still talk to, that ever since I pulled that stunt, that they won't allow anybody everything has to be reviewed prior to going to air. So
wow.
I think Ivory and I pretty much broke the system on that one.
Wow.
The sad thing is that, like, really that's what we had to do to get the attention of people to say, hey, listen, mainstream media suppresses information and truthful information that could help you and maybe even possibly save your life. I mean, everybody should be outraged about this. And I think honestly, and I'll share this, I was never a person who loved watching TV. I'd much rather be outside. I'd much rather be active doing stuff. So our family has never been a family that is like, every night of the week, we're going to sit in front of the TV and watch a different show. We've just never been like that. So I think it's why it was easier for me to spot out the deception, because I wasn't constantly consuming that. And I remember having talks with people at work, and I was almost like, I didn't want anybody to know that. So if you work in a newsroom, it's kind of understood that you're obsessed with the news. You watch all the local news, you watch national news, you're just always watching news. And I will say that's probably the reason why many people across the country in newsrooms would say that they are, I would say 90% would say that they vote Democrat or for a Democratic candidate. Now, the reason why that's important is because if you have 90% of your newsroom all thinking the same way and absorbing the same content, then it's an echo chamber. There's nobody else coming from another angle to say, well, let's think about this for a second. Well, what about this? Or what about that? And I would say that's why we have such a problem today, because the journalists and the newscasters that put forth the information to people, I really believe that they believe they're putting out truth. It's just, they don't know how to find it, or they're so locked into whatever is put out there by national news that they can't, I don't know. I don't quite understand it. I don't know why, because the internet's for everybody, but they just don't want to wrap their minds around the fact that big pharma is not really in the interest of the people, right? They're into making money. And, then you have the problem with big pharma funding all of the mainstream media. How many times, when you try to watch a program, is it 5 different pharmaceutical commercials on there? So it's really important that people understand that I don't think that the newscasters are intentionally lying to people. I think they believe what they're putting forth is truth. And it's a real problem, because you need to have fair and balanced news. And at one point, I feel like there were people who understood this concept, but 2020 completely made everybody so you had to follow the narrative, or else you were literally deemed as crazy. And I really think the defining moment as well was when Trump came into office. I saw a whole lot, because he was there was so much about him and who he was that the mainstream media wanted to report about, that made anyone who was conservative feel like, okay, I can't be honest about my political viewpoints or anything like that, because they're going to think I'm a racist, or they're going to think this about me, because that's what mainstream media wanted you to think about people who were on the right. So, when we look back at what happened this last year or the last 2 years, I think that mainstream media has played a huge part in perpetuating people's fear. And unfortunately, I think that they're guilty. I think they have blood on their hands, because they refused to tell people about the truth behind big pharma and the push for the jabs. They refused to do any sort of real reporting and objectivity in their journalism. And so that's why we have such a crisis in our country right now, where you have family members against family members, because one person's saying, hey, listen, I'm trying to tell you the truth about this. And the other person saying, I don't believe anything that you say, because that sounds like a conspiracy theory. So I would say the media is one of the main reasons why we have that issue today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much there. So much there. I literally wanted to be taking notes as you were talking. I'm like, oh, so when you said that's good to know that you said something really important when you said you believe that the majority of people in the news think they're telling the truth. That is something that I haven't thought. I didn't think that. And so that's good to hear that. And you said you can't understand it. And to me, I thought it's kind of like this, like if you're too close, I do life coaching for a living. And so many times, people come to me so that I can look from an observant standpoint and go, oh, well, this and this and this, and kind of look at different parts of their life. But if you're too close, it's hard to see. If you're right in the middle of it, it's hard to see, right? But I also believe that, when you said that most people in the news believe the far left or the left or Democratic, I think I've thought that for many years with the whole entertainment industry as well. Like, how come every single musician, how come every single actor, how come all of them are Democrats? Exactly. And so to me, I was like, that doesn't make sense. If every single person in a group, maybe not every single person, but the majority. The vast majority is only thinking one way, you need to raise an eyebrow to that. Like, what's up there, And so what I think is so interesting, and you said something really important, and that is the pharmaceutical world. So my background is I studied news in college. I got my degree in journalism. I was set to go into the news, and I took an internship at ABC4. And my very first day in the station, literally my internal guidance system was saying, no, Jen, no, do not dedicate your life to this. It just felt really artificial. It felt really artificial. And so I changed course, and guess what? I went into the pharmaceutical world, and that's what I did was I became a pharmaceutical rep. But I realized, and listening to you, I believe this is exactly what happened with me. And that is, those were parts of my life to prepare me for this time in the world, to see things. And for you, I think that you were divinely meant to be where you were, and you were meant to be in that industry at that time to help wake up people. And I
Yeah.
believe that this was probably predetermined before your life even.
Yeah.
But as far as the pharmaceutical world and like they're up here and they're controlling so much of our world,
Yeah.
including the entertainment industry,
Oh,
the
totally.
media, and all of it. And so
And we haven't even
yeah.
touched on China. I mean, most people don't realize that China started buying up Hollywood in the early 2000s. So you have China plus, and a lot of people don't know this also, with the media companies that we have, there's 6 conglomerations. I mean, they control all of the content that people absorb. And when I say content, I'm talking about not just TV and radio. I'm talking about magazines, newspapers, any sort of article, National Geographic. I mean, Disney owns, you look at what Disney owns. Disney owns so many things, right? That's just one aspect, but 70% of the content that people worldwide consume is owned by General Electric. Now, General Electric is an American company, but guess who actually runs General Electric? There's people up in the, pulling the strings at the top of General Electric that you don't know their names. Why? Because they're people in foreign countries that acquire that company, and we don't know, we can't. I'm not even going to mention who they are. I know who they are, but because I can't physically prove it, I have people in the that I've known who worked in New York City for 25 years with all of these media companies, and they saw what was happening, who was coming in the early 2000s to buy up our Western media. And it's not the white guys that are the heads, the CEOs of the 6 media conglomerations. It's the people above them. And that's why you're seeing that, it used to be 20 years ago, you could turn on, like, let's say your NBC affiliate, and they would have maybe a different story on than the ABC affiliate, right? You could turn to the different channels and maybe there would be some sort of amazing story on this station or a different story on that station. Now, what is it? We turn on local news. Every channel is talking about the exact same stories and they're reporting on it in the exact same ways. Okay. That's not normal. That is something that is being controlled at the top by people in the shadows that we don't know their names, that is saying we want to push the fact that, think about this, okay? The whole point of what we're seeing right now is to shape the culture. So if Hollywood and mainstream media, who are both far left, especially in the last couple of years, pushing, I would say, I'm just going to say non-traditional values. Okay. So for a typical family, the typical America, if you look at the statistics, most Americans are straight or heterosexual, and they value family. They value a husband and a wife together in a home. When we start to see Hollywood and mainstream media constantly coming and attacking families, and you're seeing, what do we see on TV every day? We see affairs and, broken families, right? What I'm saying is that they're trying to shape it to make it, this is normal. This is totally normal. Now, the thing about this is that the children are the ones that are the most affected by all of this. They're trying to understand the world around them. And now you have the latest push on who people are in their identities, right? They're trying to confuse your identity. So that's why we have a big push for LGBTQ+. And so when you look at the actual framework of Americans, most Americans wouldn't say, oh yes, I'm transgender or I'm this. It's actually a very small minority of the country. But when it's in your face every day on TV and in Hollywood, it begins to shape the culture and the children and the way that people look at each other. So again, it's all very calculated, but people have to understand the reason why they do this. If they can break up families, if they can break up, get people to pit people against each other based off of their skin color or their gender or their socioeconomic class, then they can in fact take over our country, because we have to be united. We have to be strong, united together and not be angry with each other. But what do they do on the news? They literally only put out stories where it's a white cop that shot somebody who was African American, right? Now there's tons and tons of white cops that get killed all the time. That doesn't make the news because it doesn't fit the narrative, because they need to pit people against each other racially. So I think that that's the most disappointing thing of it all, because I want to unify people. I want to bring people together. I want people to feel like they know who they are, not that they're confused. And I think that as a parent, we all want that for our children. We want our children to be strong morally. We want them to have good character. We want them to be, courageous and know who they are inside, so that they can make a change in this world and make it a better place. But how can they do that, Jen, if they're confused about who they are, if they're angry with their parents, if there's strife in the home? So again, I think that I've always really been countercultural my whole life. My husband and I have been married for 16 years. We've got our 4 sons. And from the time that they were very little, we were, you know what, I'll tell you this, my twins are almost 16. And when they were born, this was the new thing that came out. It was the like the iPads. Those were new. Those were a brand new technology. And what happened that I saw was we would go into a restaurant and my boys were maybe 2.5. So imagine, I have twins. So imagine 2, boy, 2.5-year-olds running, jumping on the, I remember being so stressed going to a restaurant, and my dad would say, April, just give them one of those devices so they can sit down and be quiet and we can enjoy our meal. And I remember at that point, I had to take the first stand and I said, no, because if I give them this, then they'll always have to have it in order to obey. So I'm not going to give them that. They have to learn how to behave, just like I had to learn how to behave, right? So I'm saying all this to say is that the decision I made to come out against mainstream media and the discrimination that CBS was enforcing and the fake news that they were projecting on people, it was a very hard decision, but I was used to making hard decisions because I've never made the decisions that everybody else was making, right? I mean, how many times do you go to a restaurant and everybody is sitting at the table, but all the kids and the parents, they're all on their phones and nobody's having a conversation with one another. So that was something that was super important to my husband and I. So we always would say, hey, listen, it is more stressful when they're little and you're tired and you're, constantly having to, reinforce positive, good behavior, right? It's exhausting to do it this way. But in the long run, I will say my teenagers, I love to be around them. They can have great conversations with adults. They're smart, they're critical thinkers. And so I just want to encourage any of the parents listening today, if you do the harder things when they're little, you will love the product that they become by the time they're teenagers. And you're not going to have this, oh, the teenage years, they're so terrible. They really don't have to be. They can be quite wonderful. But I think that it all stems back to the choices you make when they're young to help shape them as they grow. And so, I've always been somebody who has thought a lot about both sides of a situation. So even when they were little, I remember taking them to chiropractic care and the chiropractor telling me that, listen, if your child has a fever, that is good. That means their immune system is working, their body's working. It has to heat up to fight off that virus that they're fighting. And that's okay. Don't be afraid of that. And so there's so much that I had to learn as a parent that was different from what I was growing up with, right? So many of us grow up and we think, oh, we've got to give our kids Tylenol. We've got to give them, don't let them have a fever because we're scared of fevers. But it's definitely a shift of, well, wait a second, why does our body produce a fever? It's actually a good thing. So I know I went off onto all kinds of trails there.
No, I could listen to you all day long because you really are. I feel like I'm looking at myself, like not necessarily how you look, because you're beautiful, but
so are you.
But thank you. But I'm saying what's coming out of your mouth, I'm just like, yep, sister, keep going. I love it so much. It's so true, and being able to be on the island, it really is like, what's everybody else doing? Okay, that's what not to do.
Exactly. You're so right. It's whatever, and that, and you know what, how many times do we say to our kids too, or we have conversations with our kids and they're like, well, so-and-so and so-and-so, they're all able to do this, or they're allowed to go do that. And I'm like, well, guess what? At the end of the day, when I die, I have to answer to God. And if I don't feel confident that I've protected you, and, and I'm not talking about sheltering your kids so much that they, that it's unhealthy sheltering, but what do we do in the wintertime when we have plants outside, or bushes? I live in Michigan. We have rough winters. It snows, very heavy here. And so many people wrap their bushes in burlap to just help against the wind chill. We wouldn't, you in different phases of your child's life, you do things to protect them until they're ready to be exposed to the elements. And then by that time, okay, they're strong in where they stand. I've done my job in teaching them the best that I can. And now, I'm sending them off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know I always say when my kids say, well, so-and-so's parents let them do this or do that, I'm like, do I look like her?
Exactly.
Okay, why'd you choose me? Because I truly believe they chose me as their mom. So why'd you choose me? And they just were like, oh, mom. But that's the thing though, is, it is harder. It is harder to do the right thing as parents. And one thing that when you said, that you enjoy having teenagers, I love that you said that, because so many people go, oh my gosh, just get out of my hair because they're such a nightmare. So that's what they say about their kids, right? But one thing I notice about these children is they don't make eye contact.
Yes,
they have a really hard time having a conversation with people. Their social skills aren't really there. I'm not saying every child, but generally, honestly, speaking, Jen, we're not seeing that.
No, it's a staggering majority of, and I would say I noticed it even from being like kids being 6, 7, 8. If their parents weren't teaching them to look an adult in the eye or even respond when an adult asks you a question. I was mortified. When we were raising our boys, they were younger. And I remember we were at church one day and we were passing by some kids in the hallway. And I've always taught my kids, listen, when you are walking past someone, if it's somebody or, you look at them in the eye and you say, hi, how are you today? Or something like that, right? Acknowledge that they're acknowledge that you see them. And so many times these kids they have great parents, but the parents weren't teaching their kids to respond to an adult when they speak to you. And so I would say, hi, how are you? Good morning, Mary, or good morning, Susan. And they would just like look at me and put their heads down and keep walking. No response, no hi back. And I just thought, okay, that's not okay. And so I would always tell my boys, okay, you never do that. If an adult says hello to you, you look at them in the eye, you respond back to them, and these are basic things, Jen. I mean, this isn't like rocket science. This is the effects of what devices do to children when you are just constantly being, entertained by a screen and you can't be patient enough to listen to what the conversation is happening in the room and knowing your place and things like that. So these are all things that it's the parents' responsibility. And I know that you and I are on the same page regarding homeschooling. And I think that those are the opportunities where you have that time with your children to be able to reinforce those correct, social behaviors. Whereas, if your kids are gone at school all day long and you're working and then you're trucking them to like an after school event, or a sport, how much time are you really having to spend with your child? Maybe an hour and a half. So I think that, and not to shame anybody who does that. I'm just saying that these are the benefits of homeschooling, is that you're able to really mold and shape their character more than if you didn't have that time with them.
Yeah. I think that all of these things have already been there for eons. They've been there with the media, the pharmaceutical world, the traditional government schools, all of it. 2020 just gave us 2020 vision. It just
Yes.
shined the light on all of these areas that really need the light shined on them. And I know
Yes.
it can be so overwhelming for parents. I never in a million years would have dreamed that I would be homeschooling. It wasn't on my radar. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really grateful for 2020 because that's when it showed up on my radar. Were you
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling before that?
I
Tell me
was, but
about yours.
well, yeah. So I'll tell you just really quick. We we have done a mix of everything. So, and I will say this too for anybody listening. I don't think homeschooling is right for everybody. So I'm never going to say that. But I do think that there are so many amazing benefits. Now, I started homeschooling my boys when they were younger, preschool and kindergarten. And at that time, I'll be honest with you, it was really hard because I had boys and they are so different from girls. Girls will just sit down and do little work or they'll sit and read some books. My boys were like standing on their heads, wanting to do cartwheels across the couch, right? And I remember thinking, and I was part of a little homeschool co-op group, but 90% of the kids in the co-op group were all females. And so when we would get together, I'd have these other moms telling me about how their daughters were already reading chapter books in kindergarten. And I was thinking, oh no, I must be a terrible homeschool mom because I can barely get my son to sit still to read Cat in the Hat, you know? And again, as a young homeschool mom, you always think, oh, I'm not doing enough for my child, or, oh, I'm not, I'm going to fail them in life because they didn't get this last assignment done that they were supposed to in the curriculum book. I will just tell you right now, everybody needs to just settle down, take a chill pill, because you are not going to ruin your kids. The best thing you can do is to be present with them. And I always say, whatever you don't cover or get to cover as a homeschool parent, God will fill in the gaps as they grow. And I mean, how many things did we not learn when we were in school that as we became adults, we were like, oh, I'm interested in learning more about this. And so you do that, right? So I don't want ever to give this impression that there's a perfect way to homeschool. So we homeschooled for a couple of years. I had a few health issues. And so we put the kids in a charter school for 2 years so I could get my health back up and running. And then we brought them back home again because I just missed them so much. I loved being with them. And frankly, I was really unhappy with the curriculum and the materials that the kids were being taught in the school. And just, if I could just give it like an example. In first grade, that's when your child is learning to love to read or learning to read. But you're also constantly reinforcing good behavior. You're telling them, like, make sure that you are polite and that you raise your hand and that you listen and make sure that you're kind to the person next to you. These are all things that as parents, you're reinforcing positive behavior. Well, the first grade teacher, and I really like her, but I just was not okay with the content she was teaching the kids, is she would read them this book. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Junie B. Jones series books.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. To maybe the average person, they think, oh, those are harmless books. But every day my sons would come home and tell me about the books, and it was reinforcing horrible behavior. She was a brat. She wasn't listening. She was calling people names. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm always telling my kids. Don't call your brother that name. And I'm thinking, well, why are we as teachers reinforcing poor behavior when there's so many amazing books out there that reinforce good moral behavior? And I mean, literature is so beautiful and there's so much, right? But the stuff that they were giving the kids was just, in my honest opinion, it was just lackluster. And so anyways, we brought them back home to homeschool. I have a wonderful program that I highly recommend. I'm not sure what curriculum you use, but I really love the books that it's a company called Sunlight. And I don't get any kickbacks for saying this. I just personally, I can vouch that these books are great. But if you go to sunlight.com and you can actually go to their website and you can choose, by age category, they'll give you a recommendation of just high quality books to read. And you're never going to have to worry about the content in them, if it's appropriate or not. And so I really loved those books for my kids. And basically, after several years of homeschooling them, my husband, who was also a teacher at the time, he'd come home from school teaching in the public school and say, April, I don't like the way that things are going right now. I mean, these kids they're very lost. They're coming from broken homes. It's like, and listen, like, it's not the kids' fault, but my husband was seeing a trend of like, these kids are not surrounded by any sort of healthy home environment. There's really sad situations going on. And so that's a problem, right? That's a problem when you're in an area or an environment where everybody around you is so broken all the time. And so that made me sad. But we did end up putting our kids in private school for 2020. And so when the pandemic hit and they sent everybody home again, my kids had only been in school for like 6 months. And I thought, you know what? It's so much more easier to homeschool them with your own curriculum and plan that you're comfortable with than having your kids sit in front of a computer screen on a Zoom call for 6 hours a day with their teacher. And I know that the schools were trying to do, doing the right thing of still trying to educate them, but it just wasn't ideal. So yeah, so we're back to homeschooling again and happy to do that. But I just want to encourage everyone that you're not going to mess your kids up by homeschooling them, or there's so many great resources and I'm sure you're part of some sort of, group of other moms in your area that, you can do activities with each other and things like that. But, I think too, it's a myth about the whole social interaction. A lot of parents are, who are skeptical of homeschooling think, well, I want my kid to be properly, socially acceptable and things like that. I'll just say to you, I mean, would you rather have the other kids in your child's classroom teaching them proper behavior, or do you want to be the one to teach them? Because the other kids are most likely not going to teach your kids the right way to behave. They'll teach them all the things that you're trying to undo back at the house after they come home from school. So
yeah, so true. For me, the main reason that I talk to people about school, ideally, school changes. And I feel like the most important thing is for parents to know what the problems are. I didn't know. I had no idea. I'd been hearing about other people talk about the public school system and how broken it is. And you wake up to things in layers.
Yeah.
In life, you have to. Otherwise, it's too overwhelming. And so there were certain aspects that I would wake up to, such as the health world. I do things very differently than the traditional person when it comes to their family's health. And then as far as, content for TV and news and all of those things. And then just these different layers of things that I woke up to. The school system has been the most recent for me, or one of the most recent, but I come from, my kids are used to going to school. They want to go to school. Yeah. They want to. And for me, it's like, my son wants to eventually go into sports. I mean, he loves sports. He plays football and he wants to play football for his high school. And so he's 12 right now. So I'm looking at down the road, like, what are we going to do? My husband and I right now, just with the state of what everything's in right now, we're like, we're staying home. We're going to, do things our own way. But I want it to change. Just like you said, your whole reason to say that on air was because you were hoping for a change. And when we shine the light on these things, that is when things will change. When parents rise up and recognize, and they pay attention to, what are my children learning and what are the things going on for 35 hours a week. That is a long time for a child to be submersed in a certain environment. And so it's like, what impact can we have on these children? And what can we teach them to really, really help support a strong foundation? And it's not what's happening currently. It is really,
you
really
are so spot on. You're 100% right. And I love that you said, that's why I said, I don't think homeschooling is for everyone. And I think I still respect and admire the parents who are taking a stand against what's happening in their child's school, whether it's contacting the superintendent or the principal to say, listen, I don't agree with this curriculum you're pushing. You're right. We've just now recently heard about critical race theory, but in fact, it has been implemented in school systems since 2008. That's the earliest I've been able to find that they began to transition. So when Obama became president, that's when they started to do this. And what I had heard about, at least when my boys were in kindergarten, first grade, was that was when Obama had put somebody in charge, I can't remember his name, of the education system, and they were going to start teaching kindergartners about sexual education. And I thought, wait a second, that is way, like, they're still innocent. They do not need to be knowing about that stuff. I mean, remember how it was when we were growing up? There was no quick internet to find out what something was. Like, I remember being in college and not even knowing about what some things were. And in California public schools, they actually have, pictured diagrams of the most heinous, disgusting acts, right? No child should be subjected to that kind of thing. And so I think that, to your point, is that when we don't know what's being taught to our kids, right, then we can't protect them and defend them. But once we do know, then we owe it to them to try to affect change so that they can be in school. And I'll tell you, Jen, I mean, my two older boys who are almost 16, they were very upset when 2020 hit and they couldn't go back to their private school that they were at. And locally here in Michigan, all of the sports groups, lacrosse, football, soccer, they were all making kids wear masks while playing the sport. Mm-hmm. And I was like the only parent that said, out of the people that were in our friend group, that said, I love you so much and I want to see you play your sport, but I can't, in good conscience, allow you to do that with a mask on your face, because I love you too much and you need to have that oxygen to breathe. Yeah. And so I was really frustrated that none of the other parents cared enough about the masking issue. They cared more that their son or daughter was out on the field playing and that they got to go attend their games. They didn't care the fact that people, I mean, we're seeing reports of kids dying in China because they had the masks on all day long, and all night long. And I just thought to myself, I don't understand why I'm the only one being really upset about this. But to your point where you said, your son really wants to go to high school and play football. Of course, that's an amazing thing, that he wants to do that. Mm-hmm. But I really applaud you and your husband, because at the end of the day, our kids don't know what's best. Our kids are looking to us to say what is best. And sometimes it takes, saying the hard thing of like, I know this is hard on you that you can't play your sport. And trust me, I mean, we had to go through all of this with our older boys last year. And I just said, but I can't send you on the field and have you be wearing that mask while you're exercising. It's not safe. Yeah. And so, it's hard because you're not going to be, they're going to be mad at you. Right. Yeah. And we don't want our kids to be mad at us, but at the same time, we're parents, right? We're not supposed to be their best friends. Although you can have great friendships with your kids, but at some point you have to put your foot down and say, I know a little bit more than you do. And so because of that, I need you to just trust me. And, and now thankfully that, he can play his sport again and there's no masking, but I think that this too shall pass. We're going to get to see parents, mama bears. You don't mess with mama bears, right? Mm-hmm. Mama bears all across the country are rising up and saying, no, this isn't okay what you're imposing on our children. And I do think that we're going to see a positive change, but it doesn't come without a fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that so many reasons why parents would allow those kinds of things is I think that they think, oh, let's just play the game for a minute and this will pass and we won't have to do this forever. Yeah. And when they start to see that it's like, we're still going. And it's like, okay, at what point, I feel like I kept saying, I feel like we're being punked. Like
Mhm.
worldwide, we're being punked and the envelope
Mhm.
just keeps getting pushed further. Like, when are they going to finally pop and say, okay, no more. You can't do
Right.
this. You know what I mean?
Right.
They luckily didn't do that at all here. Our
Oh,
son
it's
was
so
able to
good.
play football throughout the season and they didn't have to wear a mask, but had they, there's no
Mhm.
way we wouldn't have
Yep.
done it, because you're right. It's like, we have to look long term of
Yep.
like, what is people, we in our society, we've gotten away from wanting to skip a beat. It's like, oh, we don't want to miss
Mhm.
out, we don't want to miss out on like what we normally do. And it's like, you
Mhm.
can't look at things like that right now. You have to look at long term of down
Yeah.
the road, what's going to matter the most. It's just like you saying in that restaurant, when your boys were 2 years old, you
Mhm.
knew that long term this would affect them, and you were looking down the road. Yes, of course,
Yeah.
it'd be so much easier to hand them that iPad in that
Mhm.
restaurant, but you were going to be contributing to patterns that you
Yes.
didn't want to contribute to. This will make you laugh,
Yes.
April.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I got on the computer today to come down
Mhm.
to get on for my segment, my daughter, who is 10, she had been on my computer
Mhm.
last, and as I got on, there was her window was still up and it said, how to
Mhm.
convince your parent to get you a phone.
I love it. I I think
Yeah,
every child, tries that for sure, right?
yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
I need a phone, and I said, I don't think you need a phone.
Yeah.
I know my
You know
life
what?
is much easier that you don't have a phone, so
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, you know what? I will just encourage you, hold out on that as long as you can, because our boys are almost 16, and then we have a 13-year-old and we have a 4-year-old, and the only phone they have is a flip phone that all three of them have to share, and they're the only ones in their friend groups that don't have smartphones. But I said, you don't need one.
Yeah,
And honestly, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be a point of contention in the house. If they were to have it, I'd always have to say, it's just a distraction tool, right?
yeah, it's going to be a fight, and you're not going to see
Yep.
their beautiful eyes very often,
Yes.
and you're like, no, I like you, I want to see you more.
Yes. Yes.
So
And so they're not happy with me, but I'll tell you, we're just like, nope, absolutely not.
mhm,
We'll talk about it. I always say, like, we'll talk about it later. But
yeah,
no, for right now, the answer is
that's a
no.
good one. We'll talk about it later.
Uh-huh.
Later, like as in when you're 18, we'll talk about it.
Yes.
I love that.
And you pay for it yourself. You know what's funny? This is what my husband always tells my boys when they're like, can't we just have a phone? He says, why do you need a phone? You only need a phone if you're somewhere where we're not. And you're either with us, or you're at somebody's house that we know we can get a hold of the parents, or you're at your homeschool co-op and we can call your teacher. He's like, there's no reason you need a phone. And you know,
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents don't agree with that, but I will say it has helped. I think, like, our family dynamic, we're closer as a family because, they're not being constantly drawn away to something. And you already have other factors in your home, like video games and stuff like that, that distract them, that we have points of contention too, right? It's like, you don't just have free reign of the video games. You need to ask permission first. You need to make sure your chores are done, like, is your homework done, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I love
adding
that.
one more thing,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, with you coming out and saying these, on live CBS,
Yeah.
and then with Project Veritas, have you gotten a lot of backlash? Like from,
So,
I mean, more support, more backlash? Like,
yeah.
how has that been for you?
It's funny. The people who love what I did have been overwhelmingly supportive. And I was blown away because, to be honest, I was scared to death of what the response was going to be. I honestly was thinking, oh, people are going to think I'm trying to get 15 minutes of fame. That's not at all what my heart is trying to do this for. But no, they just were so grateful that somebody came out and was brave enough to do it. Now, I will say, you asked me in the beginning, I didn't quite answer your question. You said, what caused you to do that? I had a direct, I feel like it was when you said I was divinely appointed to do this. I agree with you 100%. I really felt like it was for such a time as this that I was kind of hidden at CBS, at our affiliate for 9 years, preparing me, leading me up to this moment. And And I really knew, I went to the gym that morning, actually, just like 2 days before I decided to, I'm going to for sure do this. And I was really just kind of talking with God and just saying, I'm so frustrated with the way that the world is going, and disgusted by what's happening at my station. And I really have this passion bubbling up inside of me of like, I need to do something to help other people. And a woman walked into the gym and she was wearing a sweatshirt that said "Lions, not sheep." And I thought, oh, that's so good. We need to be bold and brave. We can't just keep complying and be like sheep and not thinking for ourselves. And I was like, oh, I really love that. And then I got in the car and I checked, like I listened to a guy, his name is Dutch Sheets, and he always has like great sermons and prophetic words. And he had this dream where there was a pen of sheep. And he said, and this had just happened. And he said, I looked at the sheep and I heard an audible voice of God say, lions, stand up. So he called the sheep lions, and he called them that which they were not. And at that moment, when God spoke in the dream, the sheep stood up and turned into these roaring lions. And I just got chills all over after I heard that, because I thought, okay, that's confirmation. I'm passionate about this. I know that there's something that I can do. I need to help other people so that we don't lose all of our freedoms, because people were just complying with things they didn't agree with, but they didn't have any of that like courage to fight back and say like, this is wrong. And so, that was I felt so much conviction of, I have to do this. And so that's really honestly like the defining moment that I had that said, yep, this is important. And honestly, the people that I've talked to who are whistleblowers who have come forward from pharmaceuticals, and I just interviewed 2 whistleblowing doctors. Then that big story is going to be released next week on Real America's Voice on my network. But there's people coming out of the woodworks from all of these different areas. And the common thread that everyone has is they had a divine calling, and it was a burden that had been placed within them to bring forth the truth in that situation. And so when you notice that there's a greater power that is orchestrating all of these truth tellers to come forward, that we're not in this battle alone. And I just want to encourage everyone that I really, truly believe we're going to start to see good, positive things happen. But again, you have to activate that. You have to step out into, stepping out of the boat, so to speak, and taking that step of faith to say, okay, I'm going to be bold and brave. And you're going to have so many people supporting you, because what are we all crying out for right now that we've seen over 2020? We want truth. People want truth. Mm-hmm. That's what they want. So you're going to have the support, but I just encourage everyone to just do what you know is right. And if you don't agree with something and you're feeling pressured or coerced into doing something that you know is not right, what do we teach our kids? We teach our kids to stand up and be strong, but then it's like we become adults and then we just want to, just comply and not be brave. So we got to stand against that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. So that's the thing is, we see people coming out more and more, rising up, and that's next year is the year of the tiger, with Chinese astrology.
Yeah.
This year we're in the year of the ox. Next year we're in the year of the tiger, which is close to a lion, right? Mm-hmm. And so this will be interesting to see, but I do believe that so many people are like, oh man, my child is graduating in the year 2020, or they're missing out on this and that. I think it's important for all of us to think about the bigger picture. And that is, from a soul level, we all chose to be here at this time. We chose to be here. And the light is so much more powerful than the dark. It really is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it can get like, oh my gosh, this is getting scary. But when the light comes out and shines, it's so powerful. And so, seeing people like you coming out and speaking your truth, I'm sure that was, I thought about like, how did she feel in that moment on air?
Yeah.
Like, was your
I
heart
felt
pounding?
so good.
Oh, you
You
did. You
know,
felt
to
good.
be honest, that day I felt amazing. I had such a resolve about me that I was like, this is what I was born to do, right?
Yep.
Now, the 2 to 3 days leading up to it, oh gosh, I was like nauseous. I was achy all over. I felt like I was coming down with the flu, but it was just my nerves because I was just debating of like, am I really going to do this? What's going to happen to our family? Right. I mean, you think about these things of like, okay, are we going to be able to make the mortgage payment next month if I do this? Right. Because I knew I was going to get fired. But at the end of the day, I had to just trust like, no, listen, this is such a pivotal time in history. We've never been here before. And so if I don't speak up, someone else will eventually speak up, but I will have missed out on maybe my life's calling. Right. And so I thought to myself, I'm not seeing anybody else from mainstream media speaking up. Now, I will say this, Ivory Hacker's story aired 7 days before mine. I had no idea there was anybody else in mainstream media also working with Project Veritas. They're so good about keeping everything super silent. So when her story broke, I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. That really did help make things a little bit easier for me emotionally.
Yeah.
But I'm so overwhelmed and grateful for the outpouring of support and love that the American people showed. Thankfully, Project Veritas set up a Give, Send, Go fund. So that helped us kind of transition, because those first couple of weeks, I mean, your head is spinning. And I don't know if you ever heard the audio recording of my boss firing me.
I did.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You guys should go look at it if you haven't heard it. I'm actually going to repost it on my socials this weekend for Halloween. Be like, this was the scariest call of my life. Because I knew he was calling to fire me, and he got really nasty with me on the phone. But the sad thing is too, Jen, is that he actually was agreeing with me off the record. Prior to me coming forward, he was saying and complaining to me how awful it was that CBS was putting all this extra work on his plate, because as a boss, instead of him being able to handle his actual job, he was just trying to babysit everybody who went out of town, because we had to actually report if we traveled out of town. I had to get permission from my boss, or I was supposed to get permission from my boss for me to even travel out of town on my own personal time, because that could have exposed me to the virus, even though I was working from home and only going into the station like 1 day a week, and my hours were staggered. So I never was working with any other employee. So I was never putting anybody in danger. Just the ridiculousness of the whole thing.
Yeah. So with homeschooling right now, we are learning the Bill of Rights. Okay.
Yes.
I've got a book on the Bill of Rights, and that is so fascinating, because I don't remember learning any of this stuff in school. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, I don't know. But it wasn't interesting, at least for me, the way it was taught, right? And as I'm learning this along with my kids, because it's like, if we don't know our rights, it's so important to know our rights. And like that, like I listened to you saying, you had to report if you left town, and it seems like that's insanity. Like, why would I have to? That's a
violation,
right? Yes. Right? Like our rights. Are you really free? You think you're free? Like, really think about that. And you talk about, America is supposed to be this very free country, and it's like 2020 made it really look like it shined the light on. Wait, are we really free though? You know what I mean?
The two things in life, if you don't have medical freedom, the ability to decide what goes in your body or not, and you don't have freedom of speech, right? How are you free? Like, we are not a free country right now. Like, so many people don't understand this concept. They don't understand why censorship is bad. Why don't they understand it, Jen? Because maybe perhaps in their curriculum growing up in school, maybe they didn't teach kids about the dangers of communism, right? I mean, this is what we have to teach our kids, whether you're homeschooling or whether your kids are in public school. You've got to teach them these concepts. And have you heard of the Tuttle Twins series books?
Yes, it's funny. I actually had Connor Boyack on my podcast.
Yay!
I think he was my last. I had him. I live in Utah. He lives in Utah.
Oh yeah.
And
awesome.
and I have his series and his books, and we do those for homeschooling, and
Yes.
it is so good. But the thing that's so interesting to me though is, you know, if people go, oh, well, this is for the greatest goods, we understand. So last year, our governor told us we couldn't have anybody that doesn't live at our house come over.
Wow.
What? And me, I was like, it just fired me up. I'm like, who are you to tell me I can't have my sister come over to my house? Or, you know, like, how are people not freaking out about this?
Why are they not upset
well,
about
it's okay, you know. But when you know your rights, and that was the beginning of this book that we just started, it says, if in the event that the government becomes the ones that are corrupt, the rights of the masses knowing their rights is the only thing that will save the human rights or save people, right? Is the masses knowing their rights. And so it's so important to understand what your rights are. So you have some different resources for people as far as as far as like the mandates and that. I would like for you to speak on that.
Yes. So I have been really helping people put them in the right direction to get religious exemptions, medical exemptions. And if it comes to just needing legal counsel regarding any of the mandates that your company might be putting forth, please reach out to me. I highly recommend We the Patriots USA. That's a great law firm. They're located in Connecticut, but they have associations with lawyers all over the country, and they'll place you with a lawyer in your local area who can help you if you feel like you have to sue your employer or whatever. They'll just walk you through the legal process of what your rights are and things like that. So wethepatriotsusa.org is a great resource for legal advice. Then if you need help with a religious or medical exemption, you can just email me. If you go to my website, it's www.aprilmosstv.com. There's an area on my website where you can fill out your information and it'll send an email to me, and then I can get back to you and give you those links. I currently have a team working on my website right now to revamp it so it'll be a nice, easy tab you can click on, and it'll take you directly to the sites where you need to go. But right now, this would be the easiest thing to do. So as far as help that way, absolutely. And you're so right. We have to know our rights. And for those who haven't paid attention, just in the last 48 hours, the New Jersey governor was caught, his reelection campaign manager was caught on tape saying that they were suppressing the truth from the people of New Jersey. They had every intention, and they have every intention of enforcing a vaccine mandate across the whole state, basically a vaccine passport system. But they don't want to tell the people this until after the election. And so Project Veritas, in all of their amazingness, caught this on camera, and they're exposing that right now. The reason why that's important is because we have to understand our rights and why the full agenda. But if you understand communism, then you'll completely understand why everything is happening the way it is, because communism and Marxism has infiltrated America without a single shot being fired. And it's because we basically were asleep at the wheel, right? For too long, sending people to Congress to do our bidding. And then what did we learn in 2020? They just sign these big spending bills that have all kinds of fluff and things inside of them with our taxpayer dollars. The latest bill that they signed with the COVID relief ended up all this money going to other countries for gender studies programs, and had nothing to do with helping the American people and giving money to them. So again, rights are important to know. And this campaign manager from Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, she basically said the independents and the undecideds on the vaccine keep talking about, oh, my rights. Oh, I have rights and I have freedoms, as if it's a bad thing. But it
Yeah.
is a bad thing for them because then they can't control us, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow. Well, thank you for those resources. And then, as far as homeschooling, do you have some homeschooling resources as well?
yeah, so we talked about the Tuttle Twins book series. That's super great. I do have a link on my website where you can access and order those books. And then also, I will be doing a webinar for anyone who is just kind of wants to find out, like, could I even do this? I answer all kinds of questions. It's a virtual event next Friday, which is November 5th, I believe.
Oh, that's
And
so crazy, isn't it, to
yeah,
think
I know,
November?
already November, and then Sunday, November 7th. So it's the same format both days, but you can pick a different time. So if 11 a.m. on November 5th Eastern time works for you, register for that time slot. And then I'm doing one at 7 p.m. Eastern time Sunday night, if that time works better for you. And all you have to do to register and sign up is to go to my website, fill in the form where you send me your information, and I will send you a link to where you can register for the webinar. And I'll be going over curriculum. I'll be going over learning styles between boys and girls, how to organize your home for homeschooling. We'll have a question and answer session. If you have a special needs child, we actually go over certain curriculum that's good for them. And I'm going to provide you with resources and links of all the different things to go to so that you have a very clear picture and understanding of what you need to do. Whether you work from home or work out of the home, no matter what your budget is, I talk about it all. So we
Oh,
also
I'm
talk about
excited. I'm
mental
going to
health.
do it.
Oh,
I'm
I
going to
hope
see
you
if I'm
do.
equipped to homeschool.
Yes, you are. I already know that you are,
No,
but
but I'm
maybe.
sure I can learn some really valuable stuff from that. I'm gonna sign up. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, I hope you do. I
I
would love
will.
to see you. It's gonna be great. And then, you know, keeping in touch with me on my website is gonna keep you in the loop with whatever other things that I do. I think we talked about maybe doing some sort of like coffee chat where moms can just kind of in a very informal setting ask me whatever questions they want about raising kids or anything like that, and I just kind of give some resources to them too. So I really look forward to seeing your audience at the homeschool virtual event, or just to say hi that you heard our interview here on Jen's podcast. That'd be great.
Yes, awesome, awesome. All right, my dear. So I'm going to end with
Yes.
your quote from Project Veritas that I loved so much. And she said, this is what April said. Okay. If we are shaping the American public's mind, then we need to be seeking truth. And I think that it really boils down to that right now is
Yeah.
shaping the not only the Americans. I mean, that's what the news was doing, but obviously the US news, but we're in this together with the world, and
Yes.
we are shaping our minds, and we need to be seeking truth. And it's really coming down to a war between lies and truth. And so
Yes.
thank you so much for being a warrior of truth. We all appreciate you so much. I know you mentioned that you have the Real America's Voice show.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention? I know you do a
Yeah.
podcast, or I mean, a
Yeah.
YouTube channel, Face the Facts. Tell us
Yes. Yeah.
how to
So
find you.
you can listen to my interviews on Face the Facts, which is you can access it through my website, and it's on Rumble, BitChute, Clout Hub, YouTube. Who knows? I've got another strike against my account right now because I talked about something that honestly I feel like they're just striking me for no reason, because I didn't say anything about any of the hot button issues. But so yeah, so I'm on there, and then I'm also on all the podcast platforms as well. So you can look for Face the Facts on there. And thankfully, there is a wonderful network that I highly recommend everyone tuning into. It's called Real America's Voice. Of course, Wikipedia is going to tell you lies. For those of you who know that Wikipedia lies, they just do. They'll say that it's a far right network. Well, we're not. It's just that we report everything objectively and truthfully. So we report on things that the mainstream media won't report on. So they're labeling us as far right, but I can assure you everything is very balanced. And most importantly, it's not censored. And I just want to say really quick too, I don't trust Fox News. I don't trust Newsmax. They do. I know for a fact inside of those organizations, they censor. So when you are looking for a really great news source, I can recommend Real America's Voice as a network. You can watch them online and streaming on your smart TV as well. Just look for the app and you can download it. But then also the Epoch Times. Are you familiar with them, Jen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So those two sources really honestly is all you need. And that's a really good basis. And then of course, listening to Jen, listening to Face the Facts, where we do some in-depth reporting. I've talked to Judy Mikovits, and she worked for the American Cancer Society under Anthony Fauci's direction. She has so much amazing things to share. And then also, I would say too, to really know the truth behind Big Pharma, a great resource is children'shealthdefense.com. That is where I go to get all of my information regarding what's truly happening. And so, yeah, what we need to do is be critical thinkers, and we need to be educated on the things that mainstream media isn't going to report. So the only way you're going to know that is to go to these other alternative news sites that are actually brave enough to speak the truth.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, honey. So what is your last message to the world? So tell me, if you can tell the world anything, what is your message?
Just be brave. You don't have to do something as big as what I did, as far as, blasting things from the rooftops on TV, but in your own sphere of influence, stand strong. When you know that something is true, don't back down, and speak the truth in love so that you can win all sides. You never want to come and attack somebody, but just, I always say, speaking the truth in a way that you can get people to want to listen to more of what you have to say so they can gain understanding, is the best way that I think we're going to try to reach more people with the truth. And again, it's praying for people who have their eyes closed right now, that they would realize and understand what the bigger agenda here. But just don't be afraid. That's the number one thing. Don't fear, know truth and be brave, and don't be afraid.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you from the whole world, the work you're doing. So, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jen. It's a pleasure.
Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation with April Moss. I will have her contact information in the notes, so definitely follow her and check her out. Bye for now.